You can come a little bit more forward. Otherwise you might not hear. No, they are fine. You need a mat, Emma. You're going to need a mat to put it here somewhere when we show things. I would also like to thank Kate and my very old friend Kale. It was through their efforts that we came over to Perth, having a bit of a holiday and escape out of the neighborhood of South Australia, where we got stuck. So I'd like to greet you with a word. The usual word is, with the Indian stuff, is namaskar. Yeah, it's all very nice. But the Nat sadhus, which are the originators of Hatha Yoga, I don't know if you know about this, they meet each other with the word Adesh. So Adesh means it's kind of a reminder when the two of them meet. And it is a reminder of the natural order of things as it comes down to us. And it is also a reminder to the greeters, are you following that natural order, or maybe you don't? And this is when things go aside. So if you are fine with it, I have to give you a little bit of history. And how many of you know the masters that brought this Hatha Yogic activity alive in the 6th and 7th century? So the first, of course, the first teacher is always Adinath, or the Lord Shiva, in one of its manifestations. And of course the human gurus are called Matsyendranath, the Lord of Fishes, Gorak or Gorakshanath, the herder of cows, and of course the others like Jalandharnath. And these people were known both in the Hindu situation as well as the Buddhist. They are very well known masters because there was always exchange between the Buddhist and the Hindu activities of so-called Hatha Yoga. And Jalandharnath and his student Kanipanath, and then there was one from southern India called Chauranginath. And these also have allegorical stories behind their names. They were acknowledged masters. And the story is about the quality of cultivation within the individual. There is a lot of misunderstanding nowadays because the texts, the really old texts, were translated by scholars of language, completely devoid of the art of self-cultivation, and also the meanings behind certain terms that were used in the text that meant more than what literally they were saying. And this is where a lot of the transliterations and translations created big confusions. And of course, if you look at it from the 6th century to present day, it's a long distance. So maybe the wave was coming up slowly and then reached its peak, and now it's downhill, big time. Because the entire activity that was started at the time, it turned into pump action shotgun nowadays. So each person becomes a pump action shotgun, or sits in a corner and falls asleep, and neither is good. We are for the first time introducing the first format of what is called the Threefold meditations of the Thunder Dragon. And this first format is for the lay person. So it involves physical activity, standing as well as seated, and then of course which leads into the internal qualities of meditation. The second format has to do with people who want to explore more. It's a difficult one. And the last one, without the second one, is not possible. And of course now you're probably sitting there, what is this thunder dragon doing here? Though it is new, we're bringing out for the first time. I am an initiate of the Nath Yogis in Kathmandu, Nepal. It took place without looking for it, just happened. And so what was imparted to me through the initiatory processes, it came to the foreground with all the years, decades of different practices that I went through, and definitely it is a complete system in itself. And it doesn't come out of my swinging hot air between my ears, but it came through the instructions and the prayers that were given to me to work and reflect upon, and it is hidden within those prayers. Now the term Taran means thunder. And in Sanskrit it is called Taranyali Trida Dhyanam. So the three forms of the Shakti inside, which is Durga, Saraswati and Lakshmi. The three different type of energies that manifest through the activities, and of course it lives in us. And the term thunder, it refers also, there's a hidden reference in this word, and it corresponds very much to Patanjali's when he talks about the equanimous state of samadhi, where he calls it Dharma Mega Samadhi. Samadhi is not a big deal. It's called the equanimous state where you are completely free from day and night or left and right, good and bad. You're somewhere in the middle. You are not affected by either one of those qualities, or heaven and hell. They're only in the manifestations of the mind. When you feel good, you're in heaven, and when you feel not so good, you're in hell, on your personal creation. It's not something that comes after life. It happens in this life. This is very clear and clearly explained by the masters. No? So this Dharma Mega, you all heard the term Dharma, yes? You know the book written in the 60s called the Dharma Bombs? Some of you should be able. So Dharma means, yes, the truth or whatever, but in our case, it stands for nourishment. So the way Patanjali suggests the Dharma is nourishing, and Mega means thundercloud, the nourishing quality of the thundercloud that brings forth the equanimous state of being, the samadhi. And these both, the Taranyali or the Dharma Mega Samadhi, carries a hidden reference to the body because we are dealing with body parts. And it refers to what is referred to as the Vajranadi. The Vajranadi is basically the junction of the urethra and the bladder. So it controls all the excretory functions, and it controls the largest, the so-called yin energy, the apana vayu, which covers most of the body from the navel to the feet, from the tuft of the head all the way down to your feet. And this Vajranadi controls that through the nasal passages. If this energy is not cultivated correctly, the internal life breath, prana, is not happening. Nowadays, they confuse the Ujjayi breath with the pumping. It is pumped from the head. The term Puraka does not mean inhale. It means to draw. Draw what? Because they say if the prana leaves you, this body is dead. So that means when you inhale, you come alive, and when you exhale, you die. So it was not meant like that. Ujjayi means the rising victory above death is when you manage to engage this internal movement of the life wind, prana. So the Vajranadi is responsible for drawing this life wind down to the base. So then something takes place underneath here, and it is on a rise if the activities are correctly done. Now, standing activity. A lot of it in present day yoga has been borrowed from all kind of situations. The standing work, the Trikonasana and stuff, the Vikings used to do it. Yeah? And the people, they take from here and there. It's all linear. But there's an order that completely outdates the oldest tantrika group that came forth or came out from the Harappan civilization of Mohenjo-daro. They outdate the Lord Buddha, they outdate Patanjali, they outdate most of the things. They go back a lot further. And I'm sure some of you who are serious practitioners, you have seen the seal of Mohenjo-daro, the Lord of Animals. He was called Pashupati Nath, the Lord of the Animals. And it's basically the Lord Shiva in that manifestation. And these ascetics were very well known, and they still are a few of them practicing nowadays around, but in a hiding manner. So this movement begins well before the Lord Buddha, and they were well known for their self-cultivation with their wild dancing. Like they used to prepare correctly and wild dancing. Now, it is all part of the Indian Natya Shastra. But there are a number of names that indicate what type of activity this was carried. So in our case, Nata is performance-oriented, out that way, right? With the same positions. Then you got Nacha. This one is again similar arrangements or different arrangements. It was used for storytelling, telling a story through the body and movement on stage, and for the entertaining of the quality of the mind of the people. And then Nritya is like everything. Music, dance, talk, big drama. But what these Babas used to practice was called Nritta, pure dance. And though there are 107 Karanas in the temple of Chidambaram done in South India, it's the largest temple built quite a few centuries ago. On the Gopurams you have all the 107 Karanas. The term Karana means doing, activity, or causal activity through doing. So these Babas they use for representing of any sort of performance on a stage and to convey something creative is the Nata, Nacha, and Nritya. Nritta, out of the 107, 84 were used for self-cultivation. Now, 64 out of that was used for martial activity, Kalari Payat. The half of that was used for the self-cultivation for the yogins. So these Karanas are very beautiful, and they precede the seated activity. If correctly, in the appropriate arrangements, like everything, like in the beginning, like when you go to school, you learn the alphabet, right? And then, of course, you learn construction. And so these karanas are each one of these causal forms or shapes. They are one of the letters that you have to learn to bring forth a certain experience that will talk to you. And if it is correctly done and well practiced with seriousness through the movements of the hands and the feet, in moving, you'll find it brings forth a state of trance. And then one sinks to the floor and continues with some of the seated work on the floor. And this seated work is to internalize that sort of trance which works from the peripheral regions towards the inside. And they basically, like what they say, it's like Kundalini, swaying, using the hands in a particular way, stepping with the feet, and not force breathing. It is the limbs that teach one. The proper movement of the limbs teaches how this inner breath comes alive. So very little is borrowed from the outside, no huff and puff and blow the house down. Some of us been there, the diehards. I was one of them. When I was introduced into a house where one person practiced religiously, my father. So I was introduced early at 6. And then I grew up, and then, after we migrated, then I went to Vietnam, then I came back. And I also practiced some form of martial arts, and then it was enough, so I took the yoga seriously. And then I remember when I returned from Vietnam, I find light on yoga. So I said, well, not bad, this little fat guy, not bad. When you all cut and stuff, so. And I thought he was already dead because the place looked really old and useless. So I started to practice because of some inborn physical ability. I started from the back page. Right? Well, why? Why do stuff? It's nothing, you start on the back page. And it was fine, so we eventually met, and it was a great relationship. And yes, you grow from each situation. He came to me through a book, then we managed to meet, and then I was there till quite some times, and I learned what needed to be learned, and then it was time. It was actually he who opened the door for me. Because I approached him and asked him, I said, look, all this Ketchari Mudra and stuff, is this a story on the moon, or is it real? And he didn't say that it's not real, that it is real. He just said, if it's your karma, the gurus are waiting for you. He opened the door for me. He said, I'm not teaching this, but if it is your situation, and he was right. Following day, I was gone. And then, of course, when I started walking on this road, then slowly, I'm not a temple jumper. And something kept drawing me to Chidambaram, so I went to Chidambaram. And when I arrived to Chidambaram, I knew why I was there. So I started to talk to the priest, and I said, do you know what these things are? They didn't want to share it, but I don't think they knew. So I got awfully depressed, because I knew why I was there. I sensed it. And then there was a sadhu, and I was sitting there and kind of got a little bit depressed. And then he touched my foot. And he said, you interested in this? And I thought, okay, now we go for the bakshish. Huh? So I was almost rude. And then then I said, no, I won't be rude. And I said, yes. So he said, come with me. And then it was my story to get surprised. He took me a part of the temple where he kind of pulled down the elephant grass which covered some of the shapes, and it was an arrangement, a basic arrangement for learning these karanas. And I looked at him and I said, well, and the next minute it was my shock when he took a very low, semi-low stance, what they call Vaishaka, form within the formless. And next thing, his leg just went behind the base of his neck, the back of his heel. I almost cried. You know, there we are all wrestling with the leg, get it up here, get it down there, and you know, and if after 1.5 hours of this you feel completely exhausted and moron. But anyhow, it was one has to get there. And then so I learned, he showed me how to proceed with those basic movements. And then of course I managed to get more information on it as time went on. And this took us to Kathmandu. And in Kathmandu there is a temple which has the 84 yogic asanas that correspond with these karanas. But when we arrived there, the man who was in charge of the situation said, Chandor, he said, problem is that you can't go into the temple because you're not Hindu born. I said, can we oil it? He said, no. So that was the end of that, but the Gorakhnathi temple was right on top, and one of the initiate names of Gorakhnath was Pashupatinath. And this temple was built in the 4th century, about almost 8 centuries after Gorakhnath. So I ended up being initiated into the split-ear yogi order, and this is where everything came together through all that was imparted to me through the initiation. But what got me the acceptance of the initiation is that my tongue was up here, that I went through that cultivation, which is called the Ketchari Mudra, and all the other 9 mudras that are listed, they support this activity, and beyond that they have no other value. I'm telling you this because it is important that you understand that it's not something that it just came out of some hot air between the ears. And it is serious work. And if you are doing the weekend, you will see it requires time and patience, because all of a sudden you find out that you didn't know that you had hands or feet and the rest. So the important thing is with the dance is that the peripheral regions, they help to cultivate the skillfulness of drawing the energy and driving it inwards towards a central position. So you're basically gathering the peripheral energies of the life force that hold down different functions to free it from its slavery to the habits of the daily living, and then slowly that is internalized on the floor. And of course there are 6 parts that you have to learn about. How to hold the head and how to position and move the head, the shoulders, the trunk, the ribs are very important. The hips, hands and feet. These 6 parts, one has to develop the skill to bring into a proper action and learn how to position them without imposition. So one has to arrive there through the natural activity which does not go against the energetics of the body. You find this interesting? Now, before I continue further down, I ask Emma if she's kind enough just to give you some idea what this karana looks like. She will show a couple. Now there is one stance, the stance that is held by the beginner for at least 24 minutes, which is one gati. One gati is the amount of time that it takes for the blood to circulate around the body once. So within that, one holds this stance. It's very similar to the Chinese or Japanese martial artists when they're doing the horse stance. Either the feet slightly turned out, or the feet turned in, or their feet forward. Okay, so that's the first one, and then she'll do 1 or 2 karanas. It's up to her how she feels. Okay, please. This is Emma, so she's my wife. So the one that when she went to the squat is called the dragon step. So the name of this first format that we teach is the emerging step of the dragon. If you look at it, she moved side to side, then she sunk, then again, and then she entered the squat. That squat with the feet turned out, and the one before with the hands on the floor, that one is called, it's a semi-squat, it's called closed circuit. It is a reference that all the chakric systems are closed in a central path. The other one is called Ardha Mandala, half circle. So this is one of the squats. And the importance nowadays, most people can't squat. You can't squat, you can't empty your bowels. Yeah? So all the difficulties around the bowels and elimination system is not working. You can't squat, you can't sit like this. No way. But nowadays, they say ahimsa. Patanjali says non-violence. You go to a class and bingo down on the knees and then people can't walk. Do you have to break into your house? You have to bring the inner form alive first, and then the body will follow. So these are the things that one has to be. One is a natural order, the other one is imposed. It happens also with the bandhas, it happens also with the breathing. The term exhalation, which is in English, re chaka. Re chaka means to release. Release what? And so there's a number of questions that come behind this terminology. And if you are serious, you cannot afford not to investigate what each one of these words mean. First, literally, and then secondly, if you have someone to guide you, what is really the meaning behind that particular word. Like, let's say pranayama. Pranayama is the prana, the life wind, really. But in the circles where it is known, the term prana, yama, It's not pranayama, it's pranayama. Ayama means to lengthen through restraint. But when you break the compound down, the pra refers to the primordial energy that comes to us from the heavens. The ana refers to the process of respiration. And na refers to the acquisition of a shape, of an asana, or a bodily form. So the hidden meaning, and kritva means being done, and arrived at its fruit. This is all missing in present day understanding behind. It's not something that you just kind of swing as a smart literary thing. You have to make it live. So when you understand what is required, so when you know that ana is a process of respiration and it is depend on the na, which has to do with an acquisition of the shape, that means each shape or particular shape that you will take on, it has its own particular movement of the life breath. It is not something you impose from your head, but you have to develop the skillfulness to enter that shape, so that shape decides that particular channel to engage and carry the life force in a particular circuit. So when you have a correct arrangement of these particular seats in a sequential order, then you have something at hand. That means it talks to you, you're not imposing, it does the breathing. But this is hidden in some learning. Just like you go to Fremantle, if I come to Fremantle, I need a Google map, no? Nowadays. So I have to punch in and it gives me the map, and I can, if I'm going to this place or that place, it helps me to get there. So here you also have to orientate who's working and what kind of energy you're dealing with. You know, you go to the astrologer. I'm coming at something, so please stay with me. You go to the astrologer, please tell me my future. Yes? Well, how about your present moment? You know, because the astrologer will tell you about the sun, the moon, and the planets. And you believe everything because you're hoping that it's a good outcome, not necessarily. So you arrive at your present moment, and so what is my present situation? What is the energy that is operating today? Because it is the moon who operates through the physical body, determines the growth and a decline of the physical body. So Gorakhnath, the great yogin, he said that the one who does not, the yogin, who does not know the 9 chakras, the 9 centers, the 16 supports, the 3 aims, and the 5 spaces, is only using a name. But the 9 centers, the chakras, the 3 aims, and the 5 spaces are hidden in the 16. It is called the 16 supports, or adhara. The term dhara means a container which holds something. So the moon has its 16 supports in the body. On new moon, it's in the big toes. It's called Padangushta. The second day of the new moon, and it is operated by the moon channel, which is the Ida Nadi, is in the perineal floor, which is the Muladhara chakra. Then it moves into the rectum. It operates the air of the rectum. Then it all moves to the urethra. Then it moves into the second chakra, where the life force lives. Then it moves to the Nabi center, the seat of the sun in the body. then into the heart center, where breath is controlled. Then it moves to the throat, where space is controlled from, and the fluids. Then moves to where we are today. It's called the gantika, the bell, the uvula, the tap of the tongue. Then from there moves to the upper palatal region, where the septum and the base of the skull meet. This is where the yogis put their tip of the tongue up there, but it takes work. And then from there it moves into the tip of the tongue, where all the healing takes place. And then from there it moves to the bhrumadhya, where the energy of the shape of the moon is seen. To the tip of the nose, where the mind gets stable. The root of the nose, where one goes beyond any aim. One acts freely. And goes to the Lalatadhara, where one rises above this lower situation and enters the upper space of light. And then it enters the 16th movement at the top of the head. If you really want to live this yoga, you have to know this. And on the way down, we are on the way down today. It's in the uvula again. So each one of these 16 support places have their own asana and karana, or activity. And unless and until one understands this, one's going nowhere. You can do all kinds of fancy arrangements and stuff, and it will get you nowhere, because you're not corresponding to the required energy there. Right? Now, I come back to the uvula later, but we do a little bit, we'll do a bit of demonstration why it is important. So when the new moon, after the dark period, usually when you hit the energy hits the perineal floor, is the beginning of dark moon, between the perineal floor on the way down, conducted by the sun channel, to the big toes. Now it's an interesting thing that the big toes, there are two channels from the eyes and the ears. They land on the inside and outside of the big toes. They are called Jaya Vijaya. Yeah. The one is victory over form, the other one is victory over space. And underneath there has to do with the breathing process of the back of the lower brain. So on this day, when the dark moon is over, and Kuhu, there's a channel that operates on the urethra, is called Kuhu, new moon. So renewal. It's in the big toes. But the type of energy that is here on this particular day is called Ullolini, which means violently rising. So the present day gurus, they said to their people, don't practice on this day. And rightfully so, because it's an erratic energy, it's shooting, and depends on the other planets where they are at and how they imposition upon you. You'll find that can cause, if you cause a damage here, it will take a long, long time to heal, because you're in the element earth and water. And it will also cause unsteadiness in the light of your eyes, and it will cause reduction of space through the ears. So this is how seriously people don't take the yoga today. But if you know each one of these sections, they have their allotted postures, right? And one's better than the other. So you have always a mild one, and intermediate and intense. So on this day, because the energy is rising by its own force, all you have to do is stabilize it. So Emma will show you again. Please. Okay, virtual reality. do the Suchi first, and then what's the name? Talasam Spotitam, and then just the Mulabandasana. Okay? Or whichever way you want it. So the one that is of intense nature, I suggest don't try, because you will dislocate everything. Your ankles, toes, you break your toes, dislocate your knees, and you will have a lot of problem in the neck. So this is called Suchi, needle point. For a beginner, it is good on this day to bring stability. You can spend anything in here. You can put your hands in different mudra and just hold it, and you focus on your big toes. Why? Because that's where the energy is. The moon is talking to you. And then you, by focusing on the big toes with the eyesight down, the eyelids not closed or open, and the tip of your tongue against the palate. And it's a natural position once you manage to get past the pain in your toes. And then you also, all of a sudden, you find that the pain at the back of your neck, right here from the atlas bone down, it clears up. You loosen the large tendon that connects your heel bones to your toes. It eases all the pain up at the top. Now this is for the beginner. This is called Adama. This is a simple practice, which is not easy. The one that follows from here is kind of nasty, so we don't go there, but we do the preparatory situation for it, which is called Talasam Spotitam, meaning that equanimous activity on all layers of existence. And you can do quite a number of these, 16 sets. And this brings about a change in the breathing, in the focus, and keeping the spine in a completely central position. You're not allowed to bump the floor with the knees. You're not allowed to jump the knees up. It has to be smooth transitions. So if you're really adamant, you do these two practices as a beginner for 6 months, and you will find many changes in your body without having to go and have your hips replaced and stuff like that. This is again, she's back into the half circuit. This stabilizes the breathing again, because it is the negative force, what they call nowadays yin yoga, without knowing what yin yoga is the negative force that pulls the positive force of prana downwards. Right. And now you can show this one. Next one is, nowadays it is called Mulabandasana. Right? But the real name for it is, between the sadhus, the ascetics, is called Bhagasana, the womb posture. It controls everything, including the urethra. It's a meditative pose. You can stay a couple of hours in it. You don't have to do anything. The breathing takes place here. This is what is the asana that cultivates the natural mulabandha. Squeezing and contracting your anus is a mistranslation of the word. It is the narrowing of the rectal activity from inside. So it has to come alive naturally. This asana does that. You don't have to worry about inhaling, exhaling. The external respiration after about 15-20 minutes comes to a standstill. Then the inner circuit of the pranic force moves down, and then it moves up at the back, and then come down again. So you're learning this. You miss nothing of the fancy stuff. Fancy stuff requires too much energy. Doesn't allow you to exist afterwards. You happy with this? Yeah. We won't be teaching this on a weekend. So you don't have to get all uptight about it. Right? Now, if you saw me here in the 80s, then you would have died. Right? Anyhow, that was then. So this Bhagasana, we're talking about renewal, right? So the Mulabandasana, so one brings around, the rectal area gets really contracted. In the beginning it kind of comes spasmodically. But the moment this posture works, if you look at in the ladies, the Vajranadi is where the urethra enters the opening of the vaginal region. Yeah? Meet right where the two separate. It is controlled with this pose. In the males, the shaft of the penis is between the testes and it's resting on the outside edge of the feet. The urethra is, the energy of the urethra is controlled right from where the frenum holds the prepuce. That's the control point for the junction where the urethra and the bladder meet. That also engages the kidneys. The kidneys are connected to the ears, and the big toes, where the weight is on the big toes, it pulls down the eyesight. And of course this Vajranadi that we're talking about in the urethra is the only one that pulls the energy of the respiration down from the nose, right from the sphenoid wings. The sphenoid wings come together a little and are pulled in. So the meditation is there. And so you miss nothing. You're learning the first step. But you have to arrive at it through a natural positioning. So those karanas, in their arrangement, they teach you. You find this interesting? So this takes care of your sexual energy, reproductive energy, and it reverses it. It's not through repression, but it is the reversal of the impulse of ejaculation. It connects somewhere here in the tuft of the hair, which is the seat of Bindu, that everybody talks about in Ayurveda, in yoga, and they don't know what this Bindu is. It's the essence of reproduction. It sits here. But it requires proper cultivation through the body. So this one seat controls that, but it only works on this day. You can do this pose because you can get attached, and it feels good, and it doesn't give any other benefit on any other day but this day. So this is why they say that one has to not attach to anything. No outcome, this way, I want this, I want... No wants. You have to learn to become and adapt to the requirements of the existing situation and not your fancy. No investments. And when you can adapt into there, you go naturally with it, within your limit. Of course, you try to get in sooner than the other parts are saying, okay, you're going to pay. Every exploration has a payment. This talks to you. It is very difficult to teach nowadays. I've been on this circuit of teaching and guiding, and people want to, and you want to go deep, you have to know when to do what. So this is the day, and these are the shapes that will help you to cultivate here. The next one, the second movement, is in the perineal floor. Here already the shape changes, right? Because you're dealing with the fire principle here. And they all suggest, all the great gurus, they suggest that the soul is worshipped in the Muladhara Chakra, not up here. But the aim is up there. But it takes time. You have to get there centrally. So they say that prana is the arrow and the target is the soul. It is referring to the universal soul. And these activities carried out properly are to do with that. So here, to give you a little bit of a hint, what they call Mahamudra, the great gesture. It's not a seal, it's a great gesture. Is when you either sit on the heel of the left foot and you do that kind of Janu Shirsasana situation, or you can go down into Janu. Or you put the right heel in, but when the right heel is in, it's called Vajrasana or Vajra Mudra. So this particular mudra works on this day. It doesn't work on any other day. And also you can sit in the so-called Siddhasana and it will get the Muladhara Chakra working. That means the 3 central circuits, the channel of the left nostril, the channel of the right nostril, and the central channel come together at the Muladhara Chakra, at the tip. So this energy, or these seeds help you to cultivate. Now, of course, there's a little bit more intense, but we don't go there today. Then the next one has to do with the urethra, which is the Vajranadi. I'm not going to go through all 16 because I will wear you out. And when you cultivate this energy, it's not an easy one. The other ones don't, even the Bhagasana, the womb situation does not help you here. It's a very simple asana, but it's not easy. It is called Vajroli Mudrasana. Now, this Vajroli belongs to Raja Yoga, as they say. But Raja Yoga is one of what they call the Maha Yoga, which involves mantra sadhana, laya, absorption, reabsorption of the energy that flows outwards is internalized, and then Raja Yoga and Hatha Yoga. They differ in activities and focus. So the only thing that remained from the Raja Yoga practice of Vajroli Mudra, Vajroli means the lightning thunder. You get them gist? The thunder dragon? It has to do with this nadi. If this nadi is not activated and is not under your natural control, the others will not work. So this is the situation. It's very simple. You place the back of the right heel against the little toe of the left foot. And then you sit upright for a while and then you bend down. So let me show you. So from here, you just go down. And repeat on the other side. Right? And you don't do the breathing. It's the unit with us. So all of a sudden, again, the breath becomes very quiet. Sorry, I disturbed the virtual reality voice. And so you work with this one until, so if you follow the right steps, eventually you cultivate this energy as well. And it takes care of your breathing. Especially you will find that these will help you with the standing work, and the standing work will help you to draw in the peripheral energies into a central position. And then it goes into the second chakra from here. Now the second chakra is already working into the digestive situation. So I will show you this one. This is a simple one. They call it Badakonasana, but the real name of this asana by the sadhus and the old lineages is Bhadrasana. It's called the friendly pose. So when somebody jumps on your knees when they are up in your ears, it's no longer friendly, it's kind of hello. So here, this one is called Udarkhand. Udarkhand means it references the khanda, the bulbous root where all the nadis come together. Yeah? And then here exercises the ankle. That's it. It takes care of the digestive energy. It pulls the heaviness of the stomach downwards. Right? So this bandha is a semi-bandha. And of course in this one you also again go forward like I showed you in the other one. And And that's the cultivation in this area. And of course there's other postures. But so these are the things that one has to find out. And this you will only get from the people who have been guided by others who were ahead of them. You can't get it from books. You can't get it from some fancy situation or some fancy ability. You just keep repeating the same old thing or copying someone. You can't. When you're working with someone closely, then they impart you what you need at the time when you need it. But you have to do the living. You have to do the work. You have to apply yourself. You have to trust that what you have experienced, you understood. And don't try to make something out of that you only gisting. Right? This is the biggest problem. That you felt something, but you're not clear what you felt, so then the mind goes in on it and says, wow, maybe it's this, maybe... You don't go there. You say, no, let's wait. We wait. And then, of course, when you get up to the Nabi region and stuff, the term bandha means tying. It does not mean mudra. It does not mean locking. It means tying. Now these bandhas naturally appear in a healthy person during respiration. Just before you inhale, there is a slight pause. Right? That's Uddiyana Bandha, if you understand. When the breath is drawn, at the end of the drawing, there's a slight pause. That's Mulabandha. And then again, if you hold the energy a little longer, the chin will come slightly in. That's for the people who don't have the Ketchari. The ones who have the Ketchari, it happens automatically. You don't need the chin lock. And then the release comes. Right? So this asana here cultivates you for the Uddiyana Bandha. It's the beginning. First you have to gain a slight control, natural control over the digestive faculty. Then when you have gained control of the digestive faculty, this one comes naturally. Yeah? You don't have to warm up. It comes, it talks to you. Hello, how are you? Okay. Now also I'm utilizing this situation. I'm talking, so I'm using my fire. It can get very exhausting. So this one gives me a little charge. So this gives me the feeling, what happens? The heels are pressing on the spleen points. The spleen points are responsible for the side energies to move into the central path. Right? The outer edge of my feet are holding the center of the diaphragm passive. No chest lifting. The chest lifting is a bad invention. I've done it for many years, paid a big price for it. So then this is also a meditative pose. This takes care of all the retentions after exhale. When you release, you can stay in that position without needing to eat. Okay? And the Jalandhara Bandha is cultivated through Viparita Karani Mudra, shoulder stand, and so on. But you have to know, so until you get to the base of the throat, all the stronger activities, the different asanas, depending on your limit and availability, that comes to you naturally without you having to wrestle with it, are fine to do. But each area will have its own shape. And then when you start entering into the upper regions, it's basically just the inverted gesture, which is at half looking shoulder stand. And it only takes place between when it's in the throat, at the uvula, and at the root of the palate, Chaladvara. And then after that, it's all, you seal it in, and it's called nowadays Shirsasana, but the original name is Kapali Mudrasana. The term Kapali carries a number of meanings, but it refers to the community of the energy inside the brain space, the upper regions of the brain. Nowadays people get onto their head, they completely block the central channel out because they put all the weight under the fontanelle, and they start suffering with all kinds of problems. One has to know where that point is, and it's definitely not on a fontanelle. So this is in small. This is what is hidden behind the adharas, the supports of the moon. So you have to know how to proceed on the way up. So naturally you're following the movements through the movements of the moon, and what you are following is basically Shakti. Kundalini Shakti. Why? Because she is the only female mudra, Ketchari. The others all masculine mudras. Mahamudra, Mahabandha, all this stuff. But they only good at certain stages, and after that you discontinue them. Same is with the asanas. That's why all the big texts, the old ones, they give 2 asana. They give Siddhasana, but until you are a Siddha, an adept, who has covered the entire ground of cultivation, you can sit on this thing and it will give you not much. So for you, to circulate the breath is Padmasana. And the ones who have cultivated the energy of the tongue, where the tongue is up, is Baddha Padmasana. So much for alternate nostril breathing. How are you going to hold your nose? Huh? But there's a nerve center right here which manipulates. And all the bandhas come alive just by the tongue being at that particular place. Where the septum meets with the base of the skull, it is called the ridge. It is the ridge where the Lord Yama lives. Yama means the restrainer, death. This is where time dies. The body becomes extremely still, and it becomes also very cold. You go into the deepest state of meditation. All concerns with the body are over. So how far you want to go. So this is why I said that the Taranyali, or the Thunder Dragon formats of the 3 formats or form of meditation are, the first one is good for the lay person. And if they are patient and they cultivate, and all the benefits will come. The body will improve strength, and then slowly the internal qualities are quieter and you're not disturbed. If you decide to explore deeper, the second one is dire situation. Is a bit of a demand. Because why? Because here you can practice this once a day or twice a day, sunrise, sunset. That one at midnight as well. So do a pump action once a day is no big deal. But how much of it you understood what you pumped? You find this helpful? It's not going to come to you one day. So you also have to go out of your way and do some learning. And you have to learn the pathways. The 16 pathways of Sundernath's collections correspond to the 16 adharas, the 16 supports. The 9 chakras, the 3 aims, the 5 spaces, they all in the region of these 16 adharas. But they enumerate them, so you have to know which body part is connected to what thing. And if you have a blockage in that particular center, how to overcome the obstruction without getting aggressive. You can't learn this over one night. And there's chocolate there all the time. And then you go to a place of advice, right? You go to a place of advice, and how much of the advice have you heard? That's the other thing. how much of it you have taken on board? Did you take the whole advice, or just say, well, that's okay, but the rest of it is a bit of a shit, so... How can you tell the rest of it is a bit of a shit when you haven't done it? But it requires a restraint from you to move away from the habit that you're happening to be wrestling with. I tell you a good story about me. Exactly 15 years ago, I was already doing the cultivation of the tongue. So you have the physical cultivation of the tongue, then you have the cultivation areas with the tongue. And unless you know what you are doing and who's working when and how, it will give you nothing. And then how you gather the energy. So I was told to completely refrain from any elaborate activity. Now, I used to, for warm-up, I used to do 108 backflips really fast. Right? Used to do it under 9 minutes or so. It was like, I used to warm up like that. Why do Surya Namaskar when you can do that? And then you just go down, you do a couple of this and that, and your story over. So, on this particular day, we were teaching. It was very hot. This was in Vienna. And I was really tired. And it was in India that day where the shopkeepers close the shop and go home because it's a really bad day. Rahu, the head, ate the moon. And so I said, maybe I do practice, maybe I don't do practice. So I did the practice. The big voice won. Little voice said no. Big voice won. So then I said, okay, maybe I just do 1 or 2 Viparita Chakrasanas and it was fine. I went back, then I do Hanumanasana. If the energy doesn't come back, I won't do anything. I did the first one, second one, on a third one over. It was hot. My legs were up. My left hand turned like this. And all I heard was this. Both my shoulders were here. I ripped all the rotator cuffs, ripped both the humerus off the tendon got ripped off, and this bicep got torn in half. Hello. And luckily I didn't break my knees because I hit the ground really hard, fell on my knees, and then the mantra jumped out. And poor Emma next door didn't know what happened. So I said, please come here. So I said, she said, what happened? I said, no. So can you put your foot here and pull my arm, right? Well, it didn't work. So it took some healing. But all of that created also distortions below. Because the wrists and ankles and then neck and waist and all the other parts I mentioned, they are interconnected. You do something major here, you're going to pay down here, you're going to pay down here. So I didn't hear all the advice because I knew better. You get my drift? So if you go to a place of advice and you trust the place where you're being guided, you hear it. All of it. I'm not going to tell you, if you're working with a real guru, they're not going to tell you something you want to hear. They will tell you exactly where you have to deal with your third. And there's no ways around it. You have to see it, eat it, digest it, and then it leaves you. In the Shadow Yoga book now, I come to Shadow Yoga. In Shadow Yoga, I call it Shadow Yoga. It's a synonym for Hatha Yoga. There are 7, according to another text by Gorakhnath, the Samanaska Yoga, Beyond Mind. He says there are only 7 things in this world. You have the 5 basic elements: earth, water, fire, air, and space, mind, and a universal consciousness. That's it. Everything else is but an expansion and a repetition of these 7. So the whole idea of all through the yogic activity is to arrive at this understanding, not through the, the intellectual proceeds, because they belong to the unawakened Shakti that is tied down in daily living. But to the awakened Shakti gets rid of the intellectualized stuff. But when you arrive at the understanding through experience that you were suggested to carry out in a particular manner. And then comes the day when you have to get rid of all of that stuff because it's useless in the next layer. So these 7 things, they have 7 layers in the body, which I explain in my Shadow Yoga book. They are called kosha. The term kosha, Sanskrit has many different meanings, but in our case, it means layer, it means an entrapment, and it is an entrapment. So you got all the different layers of consciousness, how it is divided. You got 7 chakras, main chakras, right? So the 7 koshas correspond to the chakras. So wherever the energy is tied, if you are tied in the Annamaya kosha, let's say if you are over connected to food and drink, and then you are in the Annamaya kosha. So you overshadowing the light of consciousness because your attachment to all this stuff. Which brings him back to the uvula today. Today there is a sound that it moves, a resonating sound principle which is not heard by the ears outwardly, but if one goes quiet it is heard. This sound causes the glands in the brain to go into overproduction of their hormones. And these hormones drip down from the tip of the uvula. Now when your tongue is horizontal, when this liquid drips onto the tongue, it creates thirst and hunger. It triggers the digestive process, and the monkey in here asks for food. So, but this causes sleep. So, when the tongue is held horizontal, you trigger digestive process. But when the tongue goes vertical, where the back of the tongue is against the back of the uvula and pushes the soft palate forward, and it touches the ridge which I explained, I pointed out, this fluid drips to the bottom of the mouth. There are 3, that's why sometimes the Shiva has 3-pronged lance, yeah? There are 3 nadis. Nadi means carriers of energy, sound and fluid and wind. At the bottom of the mouth, at the root of the tongue. So this secretion drips down on the back of the tongue, gets absorbed. These 3 nadis go to the heart. So they feed the heart. The essence of it is retained upstairs. So that's the importance of this particular mudra. Pranayama, everybody gets busy with the pranayama and they say, oh, you do kumbhakas. The only time pranayama works is when the moon's energy is here. It's appropriate for restraints. So it's up to you, because you're already doing pranayama when you're doing the asana, karana, work, all the activity brings you here. You have to stabilize. So pranayama is that activity where you stabilize the pranic force. So even the movement of the life wind comes to a standstill. And that standstill is the inner sound, what they call hamsa, which comes alive here in our the great swan. How far you want to go with this is basically your choice. But even with the basic activity, if you go to a place of learning, you must have full trust in your own undertaking, and then the guide. The guide can only impart what needs to be imparted. The teaching, the learning, and everything else is done by you. All of this is done by you. And then, of course, questions come, then the interaction comes, and you might hear again stuff you don't want to hear, but make sure it's the right ear that listens and not the left. Why? Because true sound is heard in the right ear. This is the echo. This is the resonating part of the true sound. And also the uvula is responsible for the manifestation of spoken word. So this is why Mahayoga, so mantra sadhana is important. But when is best? When the sound is absorbed in the body. Only when the energy is in the nabi. So on that day, mantra sadhana is very good. Pranayama on this day, different modes of pranayama is very good. And so on and so forth, it continues like this. So I leave it open now. You are welcome to ask me questions. But don't just sit there, huh? You have a question, then ask. Because by asking, you also expose something inside yourself that maybe sometimes you have never thought about. And there's nothing wrong not knowing something. It is wrong not knowing something and being at the place where you can maybe receive some help and not asking. Yes?
Where is the best place to learn where the moon energies are? Chakras? Is this something that we need a specific teacher for, or are there texts that can help?
Well, I could be very highly egotistical now. Because the only person that worked with this is the two of us. We had guidance in this, and I don't know what other people do and how they produce that. Now I have written a book which is being edited now. It should be out sometimes early next year. So if you look at my Shadow Yoga book, I give the basic mapping and the explanations. So basically what you do, working through the layers, the different entrapments, you're working, releasing your shadows. Attachment to this or that, or this fancy, that fancy, so you work through it. But you need to understand what you are working with and where you are at any given moment. It's not an easy thing, and you know how can I say? The astrologers cannot give you this guidance because in the way they use it, it's different because it's about telling something. But here you're working the body. The instrument is the body, so definitely the behavior patterns are different. And the only person that really speaks about these 16 supports is Gorakhnath. Not even Matsyendranath. Matsyendranath gives a hint through the 16 channels that gather the energy centrally through these 16 supports. And really I knew about the 16 supports, but I really got to know how to use them from my initiating guru. And it was hidden in prayers. I was given prayers. And they demand from you to understand the prayer, to investigate the prayer. Like for the beginner, when you are given an asana, it's your duty to understand. The name carries the meaning. In the name is hidden how to proceed. There's no special technique. You know, like I remember people come and everybody develops a technique. Padmasana. So there was one very sort of famous technique. To take the leg into Padmasana, you bring the foot here and then to here and there. There goes your knee. Goodbye in a stiff person. But when you sit in this position, it's simple. They say put the right foot here, put the left foot here. Now even if your leg is semi-straight, the heel is connected to the center of the body. The perineal floor is called Deha Madhya, center of the body. So, I want my foot here, I have to aim with the heel to there, and there he is. My knee hardly moved. But if the knee doesn't give space, that means there's something not right elsewhere. So I stop where I am. So you have to do something before which is easier. Either something like this or something like this. Something near it. So when you place the foot here and then the other one over it, that's it. That's Padmasana. There's no other technique. The rest you have to find out how you're sitting. Are you sitting like this? You're sitting like that? Yeah. Or you're sitting like this? Here you can't breathe. Your stomach just jams right up the diaphragm. Your heart is in the mouth. And after 5 minutes you get tooth marks on it. It's all forced issue. Same as contraction of the anus. Physically, you just contracted your asshole. That's all. You get blind and you get blocked ears. I know because I've done it. You know, when you contract your throat, you squeeze it and you start breathing and huff and puffing, you're imposing the breathing from the head. It's the body that needs to breathe. This is a symmetrical situation. When you look at some of the, how the energy moves through the chakras and zigzags like this or spirals, you set it up here. This is your first spiral. Right? There they go. They come together and they spiral. But they only spiral from the second chakra to here. Then it changes. So any activity is has to be done below the uvula towards the heart. Simple. You happy with this answer? Yeah, so you have to read this, and it doesn't come overnight. In the beginning you get caught up with the pose and the shape. Okay, but what is this telling me? It says it's a lotus, really? Do I feel like a lotus? No. I remember my early days. You feel like shit. Whoever designed this situation must have been crazy. And then you end up forcing. Not a good thing.
That's interesting, because I guess that was my question, because I was like, what if I'm not as flexible as you?
It's not about flexibility. Remember at the beginning of the lesson, I said, and Emma did the stance, form within the formless. Unless the form carries a light reflection of the exact shape, that is not you're not conscious of it. The body will not follow. It will not go into the dark. It's the child. Now if the mind has its investments and impositions, it will cause problems. And some people are gifted. This flexibility comes, God bless them all. The old ladies who used to do tea party and did a little bit of yoga, right? This is going back 50 years. And there were some really good ones and there were some, flexibility. It's not about being flexible. Adaptability is the name of the game. Can you accept that you're stiff? Why? What am I doing wrong? They say, don't eat this food, don't eat that food. That's one thing. Then you have the other situation. How much? When do you take these foods? Do you take the appropriate food at the appropriate time? You take fruit in the morning, it will make your stomach cold. Yeah? So it is better to take something warm. Not much. Lunchtime, the sun is up high, good time to eat. Good time to take fruit also, because it will not decrease your fire. Your fire is the one that promotes the looseness of your joints. Now, your energy is in Padmasana. The lotus grows out of the mud, right? The stem of the lotus is your spinal column. Right here is your mud. This marma here, if you look, you can all try it, just underneath the front of your ankle, you find a little hole that your index finger fits in. You feel that? That's where your seminal fluid flows from and triggers the secretion of it. So this is that marma that is brought alive gently in here. So because of the position of your feet, when you press it down on the groin, it allows the energy, the soft energy, to circulate. The fluids are circulating easy. When your hands are in a position, your eyes are down, the rest happens by itself. You don't have to lift your chest. If your spine, if your energy cannot hold your spine up, that means you're not ready for things. Because if you start to force prolonged sitting, then you will find that you start collapsing or distorting. When you feel the mind moves off the concentrated place you were given to concentrate upon, okay, it moves away, you try to bring it back, it says no more, you come out. That's the day for you today. That's where you are at. So it's always accepting where you are at and where you are not at. Yeah, I like to be there, but not today. It's very difficult to teach that nowadays. Because people always want more, and you can't really blame them with all the stuff going on. But you have to be happy here, and you have to trust your choice. And you have to hear the small voice. When a small voice says, whispers, it's hardly even a whisper, it's just a, not today. And then you get the monkey jumps in. Why not? That's how the shoulders went. And like having some physical ability, that's got nothing to do with you. It had to do with your father, mother, grandpa, grandma, and the ones before. So don't take pride in something you never done. Yeah? You happen to be given these things. So be grateful that you received something. Now what are you going to do with it? You're going to destroy the gift, or you're going to misuse it? Or you're going to put it to good work? I was almost 15 pounds when I was born to a mother this tall. I came out looking like Lord Shiva. I had the snake around my throat, dark blue. So we were on the verge of both dying. Yeah? But she wouldn't allow them to pull me out or anything. So finally, anyhow, you can imagine what a monster. So I arrived with this physical juice. What a gift. And having too much importance placed into the abilities and the early kind of introduction without me looking for it, it was right on my nose. I happened to misuse it and I had to pay the price for it. So don't go down that road. It's not worth going there. It is worth to be patient. When you start working with that form within the formless, in the beginning, after 2-3 minutes, you begin to vibrate even without a vibrator. So that means if you can't stabilize it, that's your limit. And then each day you make an attempt. Make an attempt in the morning, make an attempt around sunset. And then it prepares you. One prepares you for the day, prepares you for the night. And then slowly increase until you can manage that at 24 minutes, half an hour. You'll be surprised how many things change inside you. All of a sudden, you receive this freedom where you don't have to bother with something that was mind imposed. Yes, you can do Mulabandasana, contract the anus, suck the abdomen deep, bend the chin and contract the throat. You can do all these things, but they are all mind imposed. So this is why also Patanjali and the Tantrika Hatha Yogins, they say, you must arrive at this thing without impositions. Find out. Because the imposition gives you a hype. Again, personal experience. And then you get attached to that hype. And then somebody tells you, "No." Then you don't have the hype anymore, so you say, oh, the mind says, blah. So, Patanjali calls it Samprajñata Samadhi, which means an equanimous state arrived through the objectivity of the mind. The Hatha Yogins call it Samanaska Yoga or Samanaska Samadhi, which means arriving to the equanimous state with the mind and its objects. And then the other one is called Asamprajñata, arriving without mind, or Amanaska, which means beyond mind. So you got two sets of equanimous state. That means you're still in a physical situation with the Samanaska, and then you have to go beyond to the Amanaska. But you have to get this one first happening to be able to enter there. And when you follow the movements of the moon, so you're following the movements and the steps of the natural power principle, Shakti, all the way to the top, to its home. And then you follow the energy on the way down, step by step, just like you were arrived. When you learn this, it takes about 12 years, they say. When you cultivate this on a daily basis, you don't suffer from PTSD. Or is it, did I say it right? PTSD? Post PSD, yeah? It's like the soldier. Yeah? The soldier being prepared for war. I'm talking of experience. Prepared for war for a year, active in the war for a year, and a handshake at the end of the year at the airport. Thank you. Well, it took 1 year to program you. You took 1 year to activate the programming if you managed to survive it. And then a handshake. And then you feel like you landed somewhere, but not where you started from. And then what? So this is also the same. People want to raise Kundalini. How do you know you're going to like it? Huh? How do you know you're going to like this Kundalini stuff? What if you don't like it? Then you have to calm down. So if you learn the steps to how to rise, then you learn to how to recover. Remember I said left nostril during rising, right nostril during descent. So the sun rules the descent and the moon rules the ascent. And then eventually when you manage to centralize this energy, those two energies drop off. You can't arrive at it straight away. And if you're not following the order given by the gurus, then you will find that you will have difficulties on the way, either up or down. And there's always a caution. And then you also have to know, even with the moon, if you're doing 3 sessions a day, sunrise, sunset, and midnight, what time? Midnight is very different to the other 2. And so is sunrise, so is sunset. So you need all this information, how to utilize your skillful equipment skillfully at their appropriate times. Then you don't have to look for benefits, you get it. Otherwise, you have to pick up the book that was written in the 60s called I've Been Down So Long It Looks Like Up to Me. It's a great book. Any more questions?
How are you teaching the work, Chandra? Is it like in workshop format, traveling around?
Well, introducing like this.
Yeah.
And if the people who are interested to learn this, then they have to engage. It's not how much time you spend with the guru. Like I know when I used to go to, not just with Mr. Iyengar, I used to go there sometimes for 6 months. And I had to help in a class and stuff, and I was told, do this pose, that's it. Boom. So not much information, I had to work it. But he kept an eye on me for the time being. After 3 months, I went up to him, I said, thank you. I'm leaving tomorrow. He said, you came for 6 months. I said, I'm full. I stay here. I take you on board. The last thing I want is you on board. I got enough problem with the thing inside here. So if you go, let's say you go to an intensive, you do the intensive, or even this lesson here on the weekend, you learn, and then of course you will have your limit how far you can go with the arrangement of the karanas and the seats. Right? So you can go through, but when you go home, like when in Rome, as the Romans, when you're at home, like at home. So you say, okay, this works, this doesn't work, so let me work these tools first because they come more naturally than the others. So you always use the natural thing, like the fixed, say with Padmasana, right leg in, left leg out. What if your left leg is more natural than the right? Then you start with the natural one. Why? Because you can learn the natural action from the natural place to overcome the other side. So you're approaching it in that way instead of hitting on it. That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I was a professional dancer for
Yes.
3 years, and I studied in Orissa, the Odyssey dance form,
Yeah.
in Bhubaneswar.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, the going down to the knee and coming back,
Yes.
they're all technical
Yes.
of that dance. And my feet, I haven't done a dance for
Mm.
a number of years, but my feet were so strong. And
Yeah.
I've kind of lost, I've got a broken ankle, just recovering from a broken ankle at the moment. But I could just see the parallels.
Well, the thing is, that Suchi one. Wow, when they come, the beginners, many times,
Yeah.
and they're not allowed to jerk the knee up. It has to. So the first thing that you have to learn is to raise and lower the energy naturally.
Okay.
It's not you who stand up. It's not you who squat down. It's the energy. So when you learn that, you get power in the feet. Trikonasana don't give you power.
But I just also had this incredible strength.
Yeah.
Feeling inside.
But it works the lower
Yeah.
chakra. It activates the whole lower system. It also works on the inhalation process and the exhale. That's where it is all learned, and it's learned naturally. And of course, first you squeeze the poor people with just normal squatting, then feet turn out, squatting, then on the toes. And by the time you finish them in 1 hour, they're on the floor exhausted. And they don't like it, but it's okay. It works the bones. Yeah. And that's why I said, when Emma was sitting in Suchi, Suchi means needle point. It activates where the bone is controlled from here.
Yeah.
So you're already learning, the 7 cervical spine, that's for bone. The leg behind the head nowadays with people who really pride themselves, which is good. I know for myself. I used to put it right across so the entire shin bone was on the top of the shoulder blade. It's wrong. It blocks everything. The Babas, the Sadhus, the one that I learned with, he either put his heel, let's say when the left leg went up, he put his heel on the brain marma here. But the knee was out here. it was not pressing against the ribs. So the whole energy was relaxed. When you put here, the left brain relaxes. So it promotes the circulation through the left nostril. Then when you change side, like that first movement that Emma did with the Tandava, on one leg. So that continues to travel up one day. No? Then if you have a difficulty, let's say with the bones, now Jalandharnath, one of the old masters, he's portrayed in a Karana where the back of his left heel is right on a seventh cervical. It's an amazingly difficult positioning of the foot because it pushes the head down. So the head has to stay up. That means there has to be quite a rotation right through the entire leg, all the way to the hip. Release the sacrum, everything. So that prepares for shoulder stand. But not at the time when the moon is there. It has to be done before. So these things are not known. And of course the later texts, after the 1700s, they started to sort of call this Karana, they stopped calling it Karana, and they called it Durvasasana, and they started to straighten the leg. Nowhere in the Karanas, the standing leg is straight, it's bent. Why? Because it releases the energies. Sacrum soft when you're sitting. Even what's the name? Natarajasana is bent leg, is not straight leg. And I can tell you this, I used to do straight leg as a job. So all these things, and early introduction and taking the person with the most basic activity slowly towards intensity. But it's a personal choice how far one is prepared to go. You happy with this answer? Thank you for the feed. Any more? Yes?
I have a question about phlegm.
Phlegm?
Yeah. So, you know how you talked about the juices
Yes.
from the brain? So in the morning, when you do your practice, if you experience a lot of phlegm coming down, is it best to spit it out rather than swallow it?
If it's thick, out. Even if you're in a position that you might have to come out. Yeah. You come out, spit it out. When the saliva is thinner than water and it has a slightly sweet taste, that you can swallow. But the thick stuff is salty, it's basically snot. But it comes from the stomach. So you have to, if you're doing this in the morning, you have to watch what time you ate the night before and what. Because it is the stomach that will cause the phlegm. And then the phlegm creates pitta. So it's a dosha. And then, of course, the pitta wants the phlegm off its seat because it wants to live. And the body is trying to hold the pitta down. That's why it is also important, you do headstand when the energy is in the toes, you're going to have problems. You do headstand when you are headstand is not done every day, only when the energy is in the right places. So out of the whole month, it is done over 12 days, that's it. But then it is held, and not much is done before. And then if you know how to proceed with it, after being up for 2 minutes or so, your respiration cuts out like that. You happy with that? Any more? All right, come a little closer. You never inhale into the lungs. The breath moves through the lungs. Right? So that is why even if you don't do the other mudra, but you do the Nabo mudra, which is where the tip of the tongue is placed against the roof of the palate, just above the incisors. Then from then onwards you will find as you progress in your activities, the tongue will begin to move on its own accord. So when you hold the tongue there, you have to allow the back of the throat and the tongue to completely drop. Relax, but you don't drop like this. You're sitting upright, so you're sitting at ease. You can rest your hands wherever. It is where the mind is at the moment of drawing the energy from upstairs. The prana sits in the eyes and ears. So now the way you relate to prana, pranayama is not what you suck in through your nose and you exhale through your nose. The prana is a life force. So, that which sees in your eyes is prana. That which hears in your ears is prana. That which moves via the Ida and Pingala is prana. It's not outside air. That which touches through your fingers is prana. So when you draw puraka, you draw prana. That's pranayama. The other stuff is torturing nose. That's it. By withdrawing the energy from the eyes, from the ears, from the nasal passages, from the mouth. Sometimes when you try to sort of release the tension here, all you have to do is put these 3 fingers into your cheeks and it relaxes. Your lower abdomen just drops. You push it in there between the teeth. Yeah? Only the 2 fingers. Yeah? When you do that, it relaxes the side of the throat, relaxes here, it drops. You don't have to do anything, it pulls. That connects into the Vajranadi, the urethra. The urethra there's a trikuta. So this is called here the trikuta, the 3-way junction of eyes, ears and nose. And Trikutesha is the name of Lord Shiva. And this point where my earrings are is controlling that space. But it also controls the space because the Chinese, they call this the 0 point. This is the sun. So this where these earrings are and when the tongue is up. So all your sense perceptions are pulled together. When the tip of the tongue touches the ridge at the upper palatal region, the moment the breath is pulled from with the Vajranadi, because the Vajranadi is the one that operates the nasal passages from the root of the frenum of the upper lip. When it begins to draw, it pulls the energy of the eyes, ears down, earth. Pulls the energies from the extremities, from the tip of the fingers and toes. The energy that flows from the tip of the fingers and toes is called Yashashvini, which means eternal flow. So the prana is centralized. And then when it is centralized, it is accompanied by a certain sound as the process of drawing takes place. So the first element of space is sound. Its resonating principle is wind. Friction of wind is fire. Fire dissolves things, is water. Water solidified is earth. Can you experience this when you take a breath? Hello. You want to flaunt something? Well, flaunt the 5 elements. These are the 5 elements. And they have their organs of actions. Arms, legs, anus, urethra, mouth. So, tongue is up. So when the tongue goes there, this happens. You centralized. And then you go quiet like this. Alright? You happily sit there quietly. You notice something? I went quiet, so did you. It's the same mind. What did I do? I did nothing. The thing did it. And my tongue is not even up. Now my tongue goes up. It's helpful. You can do it too. But this is where they say that you go to the one who's ahead of you. And if you have resonance with them, then there's things that can be said, and there are things that cannot be said. It's called transmission. And the ones that can transmit who has been there. The one who's not been there, it cannot transmit. That's why a lot of the soldiers never recovered in therapies. Why? The psychologists, the psychiatrists, they've never been to war. They've never been through preparation. I did in my school in Sydney a workshop for vets. One of my students, she was working with them. She was a psychologist. So when we went there, I had a friend who's also served in Vietnam, and he's a student of mine. So I asked him, please come with me because things can go wrong. The apprentices will die here. So we went and I listened to how the psychologist, talked to these people. And, it was all good meaning. And then I said to her, thank you very much. Now, please, can you leave the room, give the key? I said to Billy, lock the door. Everybody went like this. I said, okay, boys, let's cut the bullshit. We all been there, now what's going on? You can only talk like this if you have went through that yourself. It's no different here. You have to make a right choice for the appropriate tool. You have to develop the appropriate skill. And then comes the day when you just throw all of that out. Whether it has to do with cultivation of life or killing, same thing. That's why the story about Brahma, the Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu and Shiva, the Trinity, yes? Brahma was getting very creative and overpopulating the earth. It's a story for someone to grow. And it was so many people everywhere, they were running out of space. So Vishnu, really, the sustainer, really panicked. And he said, wow, Shiva, he said, the Brahma is overdoing the sex down there because there's people everywhere. And so Shiva said, okay, I go into the meditation, let me see what comes out. So he's meditating and out jumps death, Mrityu, the goddess of death. And she says to him, I refuse to kill anyone. He said, who's talking about you killing anybody? You don't have to kill anyone. They'll do that themselves. You just receive them with a smile and an embrace. So that is a kind thing. So the idea is not to kill yourself, but learn to live and conduct the life according to the requirements that you're living at, and not the life living you. You live the life. When you have to take responsibility, remove all those things that happen to be picked up when you were born into the family, the baggage there, then the baggage at the schools and all that stuff. There's nothing wrong with it, it will teach you something. Always the obstruction is the one that where you learn the lesson most, and not where you are happening, everything is in heaven, right? It's like in where I grew up, we have lots of gypsies, and they have the gypsy, his life was fantastic, right? And he was crying, and they said to him, why are you crying? Your life is amazing. He said, it's so good, it can only get bad. And when life was so bad and down, he was happy. They said, why? He said, it's so bad, it can only go the other way. So we are at that, we're always there. But one thing that the beginner has that practitioner with familiarity doesn't, and they're lost with the exception of one or two, is that when one is at the beginning, you don't know what is expected of you. That means you know nothing and you feel like nothing. That nothing that you feel is the inner space, emptiness. The moment you make a step, you are in a divided situation. So one must never forget this inner nothing, because that will keep you in the innocence of the child, that you are open to all opportunities, but you have to use discrimination whether you're going to engage with it or whether you let it pass. Then you will not be faced with too many obstructions. You have any more questions? Before my family migrated here, my cousin and I was a grave digger for 2 years, for 14 years. Putting dead people into the grave, pick and shovel. Winter time was difficult, it was -32, so frozen ground. Then I came out here because my father didn't want me to go to army and war like he was in the Second World War. Of course, I ended up going to one. And then, so over there, you're digging your graves, and then you're in a situation where they go to the grave. And then ever since I made the decision not to, so now I'm trying to keep people out of the grave. But they have to do that, not me. But that was the energy that had the drive even when one makes mistakes. And you don't get hung up on a mistake. Otherwise you will never make one step. You make a step, and if you got a little bit division, it's fine. You make the other step. But you make the step, this like in martial arts, you have the cat step. You just put the toe down, you don't put weight on it. Just in case you can pull back and change direction. It's like that here. The meditation will come when you're ready for it. It's not something you impose. Unfortunately, many things. Mantra will give its most benefit when you use it when the energy is in a nabhi. Whether you do it aloud, whether you do mental or whispering. Any other time you're just doing a familiar repetition, that's all. But when you feel the energy of this sound being reabsorbed, then understand, it carries the understanding that will give you the focus in the other parts. You happy with this much chatter? Yes, ask. That's the last one.
Does that mean that in terms of looking at the difference between meditation and asana, that in fact there is no difference, that meditation doesn't always necessarily come before practice or after, but during as well?
You need to sit. So you have to cultivate at least that you can sit without doing this. You doing that, you get sick. You collapse on the heart, you block the kidneys, you block the anus, you're dead. The energy of the spine has to hold itself. It's called consciousness. If you start using all kinds of imaginations, like there is a thing called Shambhavi Mudra, had 7 stages. And basically the gesture of the benevolent form of Shiva is the highest outcome of the Ketchari Mudra. You got 7 gazes. So the text, the way they translated, you put your gaze here, externally, internally. No. The body will show through the gaze whether you are qualified there. Turning your eyeballs up, you're not doing Shambhavi Mudra. You're just getting cross-eyed upwards and your brains get cross-cut. You get a cramp in your brain. But you will find that if your posture is not at ease and you're not getting the energy flow, both your physical eyes and their vision will be external, and same with the focusing, internal or third vision, or the aim will be outwards. You'll be busy with the body. The eyes will tell you this. Why? Because fire is through the eyes, right? And fire is the only element that has a definite form. So form is perceived through the eyes. So if your Agni is decreased, you have no form. Your body will reflect that. And this one is not Agni, it's Pitta. It's a dosha. So you are either tamasic or rajasic. Agni centralizes none of the gunas, not even sattva. It's central activity. So the body tells you via the eyes. Then when you find that both the external and internal eyes close and everything is inwards, the vision and the aim of the vision, then you'll find that the outside is okay, but the physiological activity, something is wrong. That's why the eye is moving. And then when you have a division where your aim is outside and the vision is inside, then form and physiology are at rest. The fourth one is the beginning of the real Shambhavi. No, we don't go there now. But it is the eyes that will always tell you where you are with the body. Like if you watch me, like I've been speaking for 2 hours non-stop. For me to get the breath, go quiet, it was happy but I had to steady the eyes. And to do that, I used the tongue. If you watch, the first one was just quiet. And there was no external flow, the breath was quiet. But when I put the tongue up, if you watch closely, there was movement. Right here. A little bit, and then went quiet. The shape of my body, shoulders, everything changed a little bit. So this is, if you conduct the affairs through the karanas, you bring it to the floor. That means the peripheral energy is working inwards. The floor helps you to further internalize and centralize. And then become one-pointed. Dharana means one point. Pratyahara means withdrawal of sense activity. How? When you take the breath, the energy from the eyes, ears, all the sensory perceptions, organs of actions is withdrawn. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
I'd just like to mention that some of the things that Chandra spoke of, if you look on our website, there's a resource page and you can find some different articles, some books, so it's good to look there. There is a course that Chandra has done, lecture-based course called The Adults as well. It's an on-demand course as well. It's on the list. And I will see whoever's doing the weekend, I'll see you tomorrow morning. Chandra will see you in the afternoon. We are offering a one-class option. As Kate said, you can still sign up. So I think if you're wanting just to come to one class, you can come tomorrow morning. Otherwise, there is the other classes. Did you want to share anything else, Kate?
I just want to say thank you very much, Chandra, for
You're welcome. Thank you for organizing this.
Just studying yoga for years and know nothing. No, lots of, I'm sure everybody got a personal gem from tonight. So thank you very much. And I have made some chai. It's vegan chai and it's caffeine free. If you'd like to just stay for chai and some biscuits.
Thank you very much. Thank you for organizing it. Just one thing, it can get very overwhelming. It is many, many decades of experience, information that came alive. So it's not taken from books, it is direct experience. So it can get very overwhelming. All this kind of explanation is just to give you some idea where to go to accumulate this kind of basic information about the maps and how the energies operate, and the rest will come alive only through your physical activities. That's it. And there are many paths to the tip of the mountain. If you take one, stay on it. Otherwise you start jumping, you don't go anywhere, you're just running circles around the mountain. Okay. Thank you.
And Chandra, just say goodbye to our reality.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Some of them were up in the midnight.